Welcome to another edition of Be the Change Georgia, where we amplify the voices of the inspiring business leaders surrounding the B Corp and social impact movements across the Southeast to help you learn how to build your legacy at the intersection of people, planet, purpose, and profit. Today, there are more than 8,000 B Corps in over 80 countries and 180 different industries, unified by one common goal: transforming the global economy to benefit all people, communities, and the planet. If you want to learn how to plug into our purpose-driven business community alongside the inspiring leaders we feature on this show, check us out at blocalgeorgia.com or on Instagram or Facebook at blocalgeorgia, and we'll hope to meet you at our next event.
Today, you have the opportunity to learn from Jennifer Jaki Johnson, founder and CEO of WellMiss. WellMiss is a virtual integrative trauma care clinic that provides care from the impact trauma has on heart health, mental health, and physical health. In this episode, you will hear how Jaki created WellMiss while on her own healing journey after the unexpected passing of her 15-year-old son, Christian. A loss so traumatic it led to broken heart syndrome and traumatic grief, which was truly debilitating, not just emotionally, but physically. Jaki and Nathan discuss the importance of stakeholder alignment in building a business, the need for compassionate support and innovative approaches in therapy, as well as her journey to becoming a certified B Corp. Stay tuned to hear a deeply personal journey of tragedy, healing, and using one's own learned experiences to support others through their traumatic experiences.
Jaki, welcome to Be the Change Georgia. I'm excited to finally have you on. Big news to share, all kinds of good stuff happening.
Same here. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, no, I remember you emailed me because you had, spoiler alert, you'll announce this before the episode comes out, but you had just gotten B Corp certified, and I was like, you were at Build Southeast last year. I just love some of the seeds that you plant along the way, like running Be Local Georgia. And I'm like, oh my God, she finally certified, and you went through levels. So that's amazing.
Yes, I'm so astounded by the fact that we're now a certified B Corp. That was one of my main goals for last year. So we went through the level program last year, and it took about a year just to try to become a certified B Corp. I didn't know it was going to take that long. And so now we finally are a certified B Corp, as well as a Delaware Public Benefit Corporation. So it's a great combination. Yes.
No, that's it's an incredible, and you don't know until you go through it how, and even like we're sitting here right now as they're about to advance the standards, but you're like, after you go through it, you're like, how could you advance these any further?
I know. It's a lot. It's not like, I don't think people really understand what certified B Corporation means. I mean, there's the environmental aspect in terms of how are you saving the planet? How are you contributing to lowering your carbon footprint? As well as just being a good steward of the planet and how you operate your company and how it respects the planet. But then there's also the social aspect too, and that also incorporates, how you pay your employees, how you treat your employees, how you involve them in decision making. It's really about equity in terms of everyone feeling like they have a voice at the table and making everyone the stakeholder in the whole, on the whole journey, as well as the customers, everyone. And so I love that it's the people, planet, purpose, and profit, a good way to create impact and still make, money while doing good. So, yeah.
That's the important part. We still have to make money while doing good.
Yes.
It's the tricky part though. You talk about, and we'll dig into some of the way you've really centered your stakeholders around how you designed the business and the offerings and what you do and how you do it. But it is a tricky part because you it's almost like you have to do your best to listen to everybody. But at the end of the day, you have to make decisions in your own gut as an owner that feel right based on all the feedback, but making sure too, if you do everything that everybody wants, you might run out of money. So how do you balance that, like doing the best you can with what you have and, making the biggest impact you can without
forgetting to pay yourself, to pay the bills, to stay in business
Mhm.
for another year. That's where it starts to get
Yes.
tricky.
Well, I think the biggest thing right there with all of that is alignment. Having alignment with the team, having alignment with the purpose, the mission, everyone being in alignment. Um, Ultimately, I think when you have the right team and the alignment is there, you all are working towards the same vision and they understand what's happening, especially if you're engaging them as stakeholders and you're letting them know, hey, I'm self-funding some of this. We're, getting grants. We're, trying to get some patient capital, all those things. Um, I think the mission and the passion of what you're building is also what brings the right people on. And then the right people stay simply too because it's impactful for them. They're able to make change, be a part of something bigger than them, and the alignment is there as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, it's transparency too. The things that you can't do, being
Yes,
transparent about why you can't do them,
yes,
especially with
absolutely.
your internal team, is incredibly valuable. I think a lot of people miss a lot of that. Well, we just couldn't do it. We couldn't afford to do it, or whatever. It's like, well, tell them that they're grown ups.
Yes. I went through it, it's so funny because there was a point on the journey where we were early in the clinic. We were, building the clinic and really co-creating the clinical experience of our patients. And we ultimately launched a beta of the clinic. And I was paying everybody their full rate, paying for our electronic health record system that, our clinic is hosted on, basically, our medical malpractice insurance, our operations coordinator, all these different things. And at the time, I was paying it myself. And it was a lot of money. It was like, it could have went up to like $7,000 a month. And I was funding all of that. And so I remember calling a friend and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she was like, well, see if you can, come up with an equity plan where you give your team equity and you give them options. And so the options were like take a lot more equity and no deferred payment, but you take lower pay to help the mission continue. Or second, you take some equity, not as much as the first one, but you take some equity and delay pay. So you get paid a certain amount now, and then the rest of it you get later. And the last one was just work 5 hours a month and not get anything in particular, just wanted to participate 5 hours a month at your regular pay. And so it was like half and half. Half chose like the number one, which is I'll take my equity, no deferred pay. And the other half was like, I'll take the deferred pay. And deferred payment was really around us raising a pre-seed round. And we have yet to truly raise a pre-seed round. We've been, raising some, just winning pitch competitions and those things. So we're still in this place now where we're at regular pay again, but the deferred payment is still sitting there until we, that other part of it is sitting there until we actually get a lump sum of money in through a grant or some kind of big huge pitch competition or raise a small pre-seed round with some patient capital. And I emphasize patients because I'm talking like family offices and foundations and maybe truly impact funds that are interested in other options outside of IPOs and M&As, interested in redeemable equity or dividends or profit sharing or secondary shares, those kind of things.
You learn a lot in this starting a business like the.
Yeah,
Did you ever?
absolutely.
Did you ever? I mean, and I always love to start with like that founder story. But did you, like, at some point were you like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur when I grow up? Like, was there something? Did you feel this, or and I know some of your personal story. Was there ever anything before that?
WellMiss, yeah. I tried. So, when I was younger, I started a newspaper in my complex where my mom lived. I was trying to sell the newspaper to the neighbors. And I don't even know what I was reporting about in that little neighborhood, but I came up with something, I'm sure. I was so young. And then once I started getting into radio, when I started getting into radio, I found myself pitching to the program directors to come on air to do segments. And I learned early on that you had to really not only pitch to the program directors, but you had to make sure the sales team could sell the segment. So I ended up having a conversation with Kathy Hughes from Radio 1 TV 1 when I was at Spelman. One of the things she said to me was, you have to know how to sell. You have to know how to sell. If you know how to sell, you will be great at anything. And she said, sales drives radio, but it's transferable. And so really I started early on learning how to pitch and really pitching myself, to get the segment out there, pitching for sponsorship, doing all those things. And so that was just the beginning of the pitching journey and learning how to sell early on. And then prior to WellMiss, I had Jet Setter Chic, which was a monthly subscription box for women who traveled all the time. And they traveled so much that they lived out of their suitcase. And this is like flight attendants or, business women who are C-suite executives, and they're just needing certain items to keep them on the go. And so that was quite successful in its own way, because we only launched it for maybe 6 months or less because of what happened and why I built WellMiss. But within those 6 months, we had Mama Chia as a sponsor. We had Honey Pot as a sponsor, Conair as a sponsor. It was just so many great brands that were sponsors. And then we also we were featured in Sports Illustrated. We was featured in like several different major media outlets. So travel Condé Nast or Condé. It was so many media outlets we were featured in.
So you also had a radio career that I don't think most people know about.
Yes, that was so much fun. I tried to do it for a much longer time, but it didn't pan out that way. But initially it started with me seeing Greg Street in an Applebee's. And Greg Street is a big radio personality on V103. And I see him at Applebee's. I walk up to him. He's like really friendly, and he ends up giving me his information. And so one day, I'm in the AUC all the time and doing things. I just call him and I say, Greg, I like to do some kind of AUC report. And we were just talking. He was like, yeah, come by the station and let's talk about it. I came by the station, and just like that, he was like, all right, let me talk to Reggie. And Reggie Rouse is still at V103. But he had me go, and we spoke, and I started doing the AUC report 2 nights a week, I believe. It was for a short time, but that's how it all started. And you can actually go on YouTube at All About Jaki. You can see the video. I had 19,000 views, and it's me at V103 on air. And you also see me interviewing Anthony Mackie, Chris Brown, Big Boy, I think Lil Wayne. There's a lot of different people in that video, but you see me on air on V103 just doing my thing. But that's how that started. And then after that, I ended up working with Cumulus Media in Macon, Georgia, where I was a syndicated producer for Steve Harvey's morning show, but then I was also doing the entertainment report. So that was fun. I was trying my hardest not to be in that gossip lane, because a lot of times entertainment report feels like gossip. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, how do I balance this? Because I don't feel like you can get interviews with celebrities easily if you're trying to do the gossip thing. So I always had an angle of like trying to, what's the new album, or let's, what happened with this and where are we at with that? And I had like other angles like, oh, T.I. has a construction company. Let me talk about how he does construction. Let's get into things that people don't know about Tip, So it was just interesting. I was like, what else can we do that highlights celebrities in a different eye? So I kind of would give like the update on celebrities, but I also wanted to know more things. Like I interviewed Big Boy about like cologne and smelling good. And it was, it was different things. I was, it was fun. And then after that, I ended up coming back to Atlanta and doing the College Review Report on KISS 104.1 on Sundays. And that was just me sort of recapping. It was really for the parents. I was helping them to see how to, get scholarships for their children, the best ways to write scholarship applications, what's happening, what do they need to know about. It was just really a way to keep parents in the loop so that they can send their kids to college.
I know it's funny when people are like, how'd you get in the B Corp space? My story's about like that, where it's like, well, it starts on a rainy day in 2004. Like, where you're just like, let me tell you about all the lives I've lived.
The lives I've lived, right? The more you live, the more lives you live. That's true. The more seasons
But
and lives.
all those, like you said, the sales thing, like all of those things put you where you're, we talked about it on the planning call, like where you're supposed to be. Like in some way, there's some sort of a calling that led you to WellMiss, a horribly tragic story that leads to like, maybe I was put here to help other people get through this and get through their trauma and to become whole again. And yeah, it's just weird. I don't know. I always just say that you're where you're supposed to be. Like, and I talked to somebody yesterday and we were talking about that of like, she said kind of the same thing of like, I wonder what if I had done this and I could have gone to this school. And I'm like, oh, yeah, but where are you now? And are you happy? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, she's like, so it all worked out. Like, but
Mhm.
it's this weird, I don't know. I always try to tell younger people when you're in it, you don't know that it's
What's
for
going
a
to take you?
purpose. Like
Yeah,
it's going
no.
to serve something, but when you're in it, that doesn't help.
Yes, so true, so true. I think my life has been like a full circle in terms of where I'm at now and what I've been through. It's like all plays a role right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of I don't know, again, being where you're supposed to be, and the doors that opens.
Yes, I always say wellness for me is part of my healing grief journey. So, in 2019, my 15-year-old son passed in April 22nd. And he passed unexpectedly and suddenly. And for me, it was very life changing because one moment he's here, the next moment he's not. And for me, it was so surreal trying to just take it all in that this is my reality, that he's no longer here. And so what happened after he passed was I was having chest pains. I was, pacing back and forth. I thought I was having a heart attack. I just felt like I had so many different things happening. I wasn't really sleeping. And one of the biggest things about sleep for me was I didn't want to go to sleep because I didn't want to forget anything about him that I did not record or capture in any way. So it was like if you go to sleep, time will pass. And so every time nighttime came, I didn't like nighttime because it meant another day of him no longer being here. It meant more time was getting away from me. And so I had this thing about pacing back and forth, not going to sleep. And at one point, I would lay on the couch. Now I would just, I would take my younger son to daycare. And I would come home and just lay there, and the whole day would pass by. But I didn't feel like the whole day passed by. I'm just laying there and I'm looking at the roof and I'm, thinking about different things. I'm standing outside, surrounded by all my trees, and just kind of just standing there and just sharing my own thoughts. Like I can't believe it's not here, and it was just so many things that was happening. And so I remember about 6 months into him passing, I finally went to a cardiologist. And I shared with him, I shared everything that happened, and he was running some tests and everything. And he came back to me. He said, "This is broken heart syndrome." He was like, this broken heart, have you heard of broken heart syndrome? And I said, no. And I said, actually, I said, yes, but I didn't know I just thought people said broken heart syndrome. I didn't know that it was a real thing. And so when he shared about broken heart syndrome, he said, based on what you share with me, you know, this is how this would have happened. And he said, I can give you medication to help you because your heart is also stressed during that time. So a lot of times you might have like the hypertension, other things is going on because you're putting stress in the heart. It's also affecting that left ventricle. And so he did give me some blood pressure medicine. I needed it too. So we did the blood pressure medicine. But he also saw that my heart was leaking. He said, you have a leaky heart valve. And my heart never leaked prior to that. So I remember saying to him, wow, my heart is like literally leaking for my son, like literally. And so that was the broken heart syndrome, the leaky heart valve. And he shared too that broken heart syndrome could be fatal as well. And so it's really about working on it, like working through what you've been through to help the heart to heal. And so that for me was such a confirmation because I remember early in my journey, I was trying to find a therapist. And the first therapist, she couldn't remember. So the first therapist wanted me to write a goodbye letter. Sorry. The first therapist wanted me to write a goodbye letter on our first visit. And I was like, I can't write a goodbye letter. I never want to say goodbye. This, how do you write a goodbye letter? The second therapist, I asked her if she ever worked with a parent who lost a child. And she said, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. The third therapist, I'm sharing my thoughts. I'm telling her what happened about his last moments, watching him, watching the coroner take him away, all these things. And she's just sitting there while I'm crying. She's sitting way over there. I'm sitting over here. And she's making me feel like I'm crazy for crying. Like she's not giving me any tissue, anything. So, okay. So then the fourth therapist said she really worked in grief. And so when I shared what happened, I gave her a lot more detail. She was like, well, I don't think I'm going to be able to help you. You might have to find somebody else who can help you. And so early on, I was starting to see not every third, she can really work with grief. I was like, she's not really like grief. She's not doing grief, like hard grief. So then the fifth therapist, she was in her late, I think she was in her 70s. And she taught at Morehouse School of Medicine as well. And I remember when I came into her office, she had a rocking chair, kind of like the rocking chair from the old show called Archie. The Archie rocking chair, that's what it looked like. And then she had a long couch with caramels and peppermints on both sides. And then she had a blanket. She said, make yourself comfortable. And I remember that first day, I'm sharing everything with her. I'm giving all the details. And she leans in and she goes, I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. I've never lost a child before, but I have worked with parents who have. And we're going to take this one day at a time. And I just remember just hearing that and just it's making me emotional now thinking about it. But she leaned in, she hugged me, and we cried. That's what I need. I needed someone to lean in and hug me and cry. And the thing I loved about my therapist, during that time, I had her for a certain time on the journey. I remember she would share things with me because I had this thing where when it was really hot, I would be like, oh my God, he's hot. He's sitting out there just hot. Even though I know he's not in his body, I was still his body is hot. Oh my God, it's hot outside. His body has to be hot. And she talked about, I think either one of her parents, she said about, I think it was one of her parents, she talked about how when it was really cold, she was thinking the same thing one day. She said, he has to be, I think it was her dad, and she was saying, Dad, he has to be cold out there. And so she's like, I know what you mean. And so early on, I loved how she always met me where I was, how she was not afraid to share her own journey with me. And then later she started a support group with other moms who were grieving, and so many different ways their children passed away. Everybody was mainly adult children. I had a young child, and my son was 15 at the time. But when I was in therapy with her, I remember thinking to myself, this is just not enough. This is just therapy. I kept feeling like my body was grieving my son. I was like, because my body is having issues. I'm eating a lot. I can't sleep. I'm pacing back and forth still. My heart is hurting, all these things. And so just going to the cardiologist, it was I knew it. I knew that it wasn't just my mind that was grieving my son. My body is also grieving my son. And so that really catapulted this whole journey of learning more about how ultimately when you go through something traumatic, it's not only does your mind get affected by it, but your body, the research shows that your body is also affected by the trauma. And so the body does indeed keep score. And so that is where WellMiss was ultimately built. It was built to be this one place where she could come when she goes to something extremely traumatic, where we focus on heart health, physical health, and mental health in the recovery process of her trauma. And so, just to go back for a second, so what is WellMiss? WellMiss is a virtual integrative trauma care clinic for women who are victims of crime, survivors of traumatic loss, and life-altering experiences. And what we do is we provide the care that takes this multidisciplinary approach with a multidisciplinary care team that focuses on those elements, the heart health, physical health, and mental health. And we do this in group care because when you've been through something very traumatic, you already feel alone. That was the biggest thing on my journey. I used to always feel like No one understands the depth of my pain. No one understands how much I miss my son. It was so many different types of pains. There was so many different types of pains, and nobody really gets it. And sometimes, like I definitely prayed all those things, but sometimes people wanted to pray it away, or I was like, you can't just pray this away. Like it's not like this. That's not that easy. Like it's not like that. Like you can't spiritually bypass this healing journey I'm going through. And so I needed so much help, but I always felt alone. There was times at night where I just needed someone to just speak to, because I wanted to just feel not alone on my journey. And there was also this other element of not only feeling alone and needing someone to speak to, but there was this element of just needing to see a therapist more than once a week. Early on in the journey, I wanted to see somebody every single day, because I was trying to figure out what just happened. So early on, it was like I needed somebody every single day. Then eventually it was like, once a week. It was already once a week, but then like once every 2 weeks, once a month. But we had to build up to that. But initially, when that traumatic experience happens, you kind of need like a lot of help. You're not like, you need help. Like you could do therapy every day, like you want it every day. And so the other thing I wanted to mention was traumatic grief. And so when someone passes suddenly or violently, just very traumatic, that is where you have traumatic grief, where it can be very debilitating, because it messes not only with your mental health, but your physical health, and just like socially, like being around people, your eating, everything is affected by it, because it was a traumatic experience. And therefore the grief is not your regular grief. This is like traumatic grief. So it breaks you down. And so no one really talked about that. I later had to learn that that's what I was going through. That's why it felt so debilitating for me of what happened. And so WellMiss wellness is what I needed. It was that place to go where you get group care, you're not alone, and you get group therapy, and you get nutritional counseling. You have doctors who are, teaching about trauma education and how it impacts you physically, and, talking about hypertension and traumatic stress, and talking about grief and insomnia, and helping you to understand how it's all connected, and how you really have to nurture the whole person when something traumatic happens. And so WellMiss is here now, and we take insurance. We take the Victims Compensation Fund. We're in Georgia and Florida, and we're expanding to Louisiana and California this year. And so we are growing. We're working on our partnerships, and it has been a beautiful journey, because even though I brought my own lived experience into building WellMiss, my clinicians have their own lived experience, which is beautiful. Because as part of the training that we did when our clinicians were onboarding, they did 6 months of compassionate inquiry, which is Gabor Monte's it's a somatic psychotherapeutic approach to trauma that he created along with another colleague of his. And so my team had to work on their own trauma for 6 months as part of understanding how to make sure everything was being worked on and being healed. One of the things I noticed early in my journey too was I went to a really huge therapist conference, and one of the big therapists was on the screen doing a session. I think it was internal family systems he might have been doing. And at the end of the demo, everybody finds out that this is a therapist that he's helping in the session. And everybody goes, "Oh my God." And that's when I realized, like, a lot of therapists don't really work on their trauma. They don't really do the work. And in order to like work with, others who have been through trauma, you have to do the work. You got to do the work. You have to do the trauma work.
And I wonder if I just can only imagine that I say that all the time about people who do like social impact work. I do a lot of work out, and I was out this morning, and so I get to know a lot of the people experiencing homelessness on how whatever term we get, like you kind of carry their trauma with you because you want to help everybody, and like it starts to build up. And I've always wondered if therapists, how they compartmentalize that component of like hearing your story and hearing others' stories that are similar or even worse, like the traumatic grief that they have to take in. It makes sense that they should probably talk to somebody and process that, because I can only, or I mean, or I guess maybe you're really well trained to just kind of, you shut that off and you go make dinner and have dinner with your family. I don't know.
Well, from my understanding, so when they worked on their trauma, so what I mean by that is like past trauma, but there's a such thing as called secondary trauma, which is when you are helping others who have been through very traumatic experiences and you start to take it on emotionally too, because it's heavy. And so it's recommended that therapists are supposed to go to therapy. Now, when I went to the therapist conference back in 2022, it's 2023, one of the two, I remember that some therapists told me that it wasn't like, it's not like like they don't have to go to therapy. It's more of by choice to go to therapy. But I think every therapist should have to go to therapy for sure. Especially if you're working through heavy stuff. I mean, just anything. I mean, I think the things where you go through in therapy, you know, learning others, you know, you do have to work through that. But when it's heavy stuff, like the work that we're doing, you do want to work through that. And one of the things that we're doing now is we're implementing a digress day where our clinicians could come together and just digress and just cry if they want to, talk about what's happening with our patients. Just, do a little bit of meditation, do some breath work, do some grounding, do some dance therapy, some African dance with Dr. Kumba from Spelman College, or, some sound bowl. We do all of that just to kind of help our team just relax. So just implementing that more so that they can digress. But also, one of the things we did too was we also co-created with our patients. Yes. And so our patients have been a part of that journey of helping us to build out, what they want the care to look like. And so I knew early on, I was like, well, all they're going to think about is talk therapy, CBT. So I was like, I have to introduce them to other modalities. So I would send out a survey and I would say, do you want to see ecotherapy? Do you want to have nature involved in your therapy? Do you want to see, do you want to do nutritional counseling where you can do a virtual pantry and look at what you have in your kitchen that you can eat, with what you're going through while you're grieving, that will still be helpful for your mental health, because food does impact your mental health. And at the same time, can help you as you're working through the grief. So let's do virtual pantries. Let's do virtual cooking during nutritional counseling. Let's do book therapy. Let's use books where you can bring a book into it and everybody's reading a book and doing certain chapters and exercising and using that for therapy. So I just wanted to introduce them to so much, internal family system, so many elements, and they were really excited. So we've been able to build around that, and that's been amazing.
Well, that's the coolest part. I remember when we had our little like planning call, was talking through like as a B Corp, and bringing it back to the kind of the opening of like the stakeholder feedbacks, whatever we always call it, like a stakeholder driven economic system. It blew me away how much there was a centering around your stakeholders as you built this thing. Like, and I mean, I'm looking at my notes right now. We talked about operational KPIs. We talked about onboarding. We talked about care. We talked about how many appointments is the right amount of appointments. Like, we talked about all these things that it was like, you didn't just assume that you knew because you had gone through it. It was like, maybe you were figuring it out with everybody kind of sitting at the table around you, kind of putting their arms around each other, the therapists, the patients, the caregivers, just kind of everybody kind of like, what will make this at the end of the day, it is what will make this, versus like, I think a traditional business where it's like, not that every business is like, how do we make the most money the quickest, but this is really like, how do we provide the best care to help people return to some sense of normalcy and a regular life, and to be able to deal with things and process things and proceed, not necessarily move on with life, and be able to kind of live a healthy and full life. And it just, I mean, I was blown away as you talked about some of that, how much you centered your stakeholders and everything you're doing. It's, I mean, I don't know if that's a question or me tipping my cap, but it's really beautiful.
No, thank you so much. We walk alongside her. one of the things in our job descriptions, one of the sentences I have in there is leaning in, compassionate, and being empathetic and leaning in when she's speaking, speaking with her, not to her. So, a lot of times, I think within the trauma space specifically, when you start getting into this space, because the trauma space in therapy is really a specialized space. This is a more specialized therapist because you're looking beyond your CBT and your DBT. You're looking at EMDR, you're looking at internal family systems, maybe compassion inquiry, maybe eco psychology, maybe transpersonal psychology. You're looking at a lot of different elements that's going to help her on the journey.
You went through it. How many therapists did you go to?
I know. I was like,
I just
all these general therapists.
I just want somebody to hug me while I cry. That's what I want.
Yes. So I said it to say that these therapists already know that it's a certain kind of space you have to hold. So yes, you still come in with theory, but you come in with like space, because for a lot of our WellMiss, so we use patients and WellMiss interchangeably, but our WellMiss, a lot of them, it's not about moving on, because when you lost a child, you lost a husband, and even if it's an adult child and it's a traumatic loss, the way because remember, we work with victims of crime, so we work with homicide loss, we work with murdered children loss, domestic violence, assault, human torture, human trafficking, heavy stuff. And so I said it to say that the things that they go through, it's not about necessarily being healed for some of them. It's about a healing journey that we're supporting them on, because for some of them, they're going to have a grief that doesn't necessarily leave. So how do we help her to hold space for the duality of heavy grief and still wanting to live and have a purposeful and impactful and exciting and beautiful life, and be there for her other children if she has other children? So a lot of times when a parent loses a child, the children lose the parent too, because she's so deep. He or she is so deep in this grief that they eventually, it's so debilitating, like I said earlier, that they die to the children. So the children lose a parent and a sibling. And so the goal was how do we hold space? And I even said that to my therapist, because with our team, when I'm talking to them, I'm like, hey, it's always about holding space too. And even though I'm not necessarily a clinician, I've been trained as a trauma educator, trained in grief informed training. I've taken a compassion inquiry training. I've taken a lot of trainings that my clinicians have trained. We've taken them all together. And one of the things I've learned is just, continue to hold space, but you can learn a lot from patients. It's not like the clinicians know. You can learn a lot if you tune in. They help you to see what they need. They help you to understand what kind of flow they need, all of that. And so it's being open enough to say, what is my patient telling me? And how do I tune to that? And how do I serve them better? Because if you can serve them better, you can create the impact and the healing that you want. Knowing that for some, it could be a healing journey that's fast and quick. And for some, it may be a lifetime healing journey. But it's how do we hold space? How do we have our toolkit? And give her a toolkit to help her so that this healing journey does not impact her physical health or further impact her mental health. And so that's what we're there for. So we're listening, we're tuned, and she's helping us, make the best journey for her.
How has this journey helped your own journey with WellMiss?
Oh,
has it helped you process? And you said you never heal, but on your healing journey, has helping others get through this helped you?
Yes. So, some people do heal. It just depends on what they've been through. But I'm on a journey where it is going to be a lifetime healing grief journey for me, because I'm always going to miss my son. But speaking to our WellMiss, it's been so beautiful, because for some of them, their husband might have died or adult child might have died. And it's a lot of times it can be very extreme how they pass. And just to see them when we're talking, sometimes they might want to do a T-chat with me. I do a T-chat with all of our patients. I always want to know, how is care going? How did the onboarding go? How's it going with the doctor? How's it going with the therapist? How's it going with nutritional counseling? How is it going? Is there anything that we need to think of, that we haven't thought of, that can best serve you. And so it's been healing for me because I listened to them and they was telling me, this has helped me so much. Thank you for building this. Thank you so much. Like, and you get me, you understand what I've been through. And, I came here because I heard your story. And then now that I'm here, you all listen to me too. And you care about me. You see me, you support me, you help me. And it just feels beautiful because I'm like, this is what I needed on my journey. And so as they're feeling more seen and supported and they're getting the tools in their toolkit, it's helping me as well. And I'm learning from them. I learn from them all the time. And they share a lot with me a lot of times. And so it's always just so beautiful to be like, wow, like, and my son's name is Christian. I'll say, Christian, we're really doing this, huh? We're really doing this. You got me here doing this kind of work. This is beautiful. I didn't know I was going to be here. It does make me sad sometimes to be like, how I got here. But this is some deep work, and people have to want to do this kind of work. This is not general therapy.
No.
You definitely have to have your doctors involved too, because this is the kind of trauma that's going to truly impact the body. Even just stress over time starts to tear the body down. So general stress, but these traumatic experiences will, 8 out of 10, chronic conditions, including heart disease, suicidal ideation, addiction, lung disease, cancer, all associated with unaddressed trauma. So trauma has to be addressed because it will create the inflammation in the body from the stress that's in the body, and also create the chronic condition. And so if you go through something traumatic and you already have issues going on, that traumatic experience, if you don't work through it, the aftermath of that's in the body can then exacerbate the other conditions. So you have to work through it.
Yeah. I credit somebody like Joey Womack has been on, who's got the All Founders Need Therapy t-shirt, and, has regular, and granted, it's not like he'll tell you it's not therapy, but
yeah,
it is.
I know it's goals. You have to know. Yes.
But it is that opportunity that we all do. But he's also very open, like somebody who's a thought leader talking about going to their therapist, I think is, even for our generation, where like, and again, this is, we joked on the planning call, like, this isn't like working through how your parents scarred you. It's a lot deeper, but that, normalizing therapy, I think for a lot of people is a healthy space that whether we're evolving, emotionally, intelligent wise or whatever. I think it's a good change that people are like, everybody should be going to therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely.
But I thank you so much. I would love to continue. Well, we'll continue this conversation. Just won't record it and share it with the world. But I just want to thank you for coming on and for what you've built, and for your candor and your rawness in talking about the story and the journey and kind of this beautiful like phoenix that's rising, and what you've been able to build and coming into the B Corp community and just something that's so needed. And I don't know, I'm just so glad that our paths crossed and we got you to build last year, and now you're in the B Corp community, and now we're building a friendship, and it's just a beautiful thing. And I'm just grateful for you.
Yes. Thank you, Nathan. You are so amazing. You are a rock star, and I love, love, love the energy that you bring. So I'm so happy and honored that I get to be your new friend and get to meet you and learn more about you. So thank you.
Now we'll get you to build Southeastern Florida in 3 months, 2 months. Ooh.
Yes. Okay. Gotta put that on my schedule.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be there.
Yeah, we'll get you there. So awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on, and congratulations on the B Corp certification. I'm excited, and I'm glad that you and Siobhan, who was just on a couple months ago on the podcast, she also went through level, and then we've got the Bridges pilot running out of the Russell Center right now. So it's great. It's great to see B Lab after years of, I don't want to say me complaining, but to see them investing in the city of Atlanta and the state of Georgia and just the South in general has been feels very good to see. All these new B Corps coming out of some of their programming. So warms my heart.
Yes. I'm excited for all of them and for the more B Corps to come. So yes, this is the move to be in. This is the movement. We're in a movement. This is the movement. Impact or go home.
Dropping the mic on that one. Thank you for coming on. Impact or go home, folks. Thank you, Jaki. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Well, that wraps up another edition of Be the Change Georgia. We're grateful, as always, for the opportunity to serve you with this content and grow this incredible community of purpose-driven B Corp leaders. If you haven't already, we would be grateful for you to rate this show wherever you get your podcasts by simply tapping the number of stars you think it deserves and sharing it with a friend. This helps us get the word out and continue to use our collective influence as a force for good. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the help from our production team at Chat with Leaders Media. Learn how you can launch your own podcast to grow your business at chatwithleaders.com. Thanks again for listening, and now go be a leader worth following.